So what is up, guys? Nick here, helping you to master your technology. Now, I've had the Samsung Galaxy Z Flip now for about 24 hours, and yes, I already have identified plenty of cons. I don't want you to get me wrong here. I'm not trying to bash this phone and like try to convince you not to buy it. I mean, inherently, some cons may convince you to do that. But for me, I think this phone is super cool. And honestly, I don't plan on getting rid of this device. But there are some cons that you should be aware of when you're going to invest $1,380. Let's begin with the first one on this phone. Now, similar to the Samsung Galaxy Fold, you can see right there in the light, there is a crease on this phone. However, that wasn't a huge deal for the Galaxy Fold because the Galaxy Fold had a much larger display and more of a horizontal display. With this being a vertical portrait style display, let me go ahead and turn off the dark mode. You're going to see that every time you scroll, you are going to be scrolling through that crease and you feel it so much, and it gives it an odd feeling. It gives it this feeling that it's not polished, or it doesn't feel super smooth because you have this smooth continuous motion, and then you're going to scroll right through that crease and you feel it every time. And we do this a lot on the day-to-day, and for me, I've already identified that as a con because while you can get around that on the Galaxy Fold by just scrolling on the different sides of the display, with this you kind of can't avoid it unless you really want to be scrolling just down here or up here. But why should you have to think about that? Just saying. That's the first con I've identified so far with this Galaxy Z Flip. Next up is this aspect ratio on this phone is super tall. So what that means is that when using this phone, it's going to be quite a bit of a reach up there to the top of this device. I think it's like 9:22. This aspect ratio feels slender, narrow, and extremely tall. It's kind of like holding a little remote in your hand right here. It's a very tall aspect when it is flipped open. And having that aspect ratio also makes this kind of an awkward looking phone when you are in the landscape mode. Now you do have it, which I do appreciate, but you can see right there, look how long this is. It just feels and looks a little bit strange to me. You can just see how long the calculator is. Just a little bit different, just something I'm not used to with this device. And that taller display actually makes this a little bit odd when using this in the landscape mode. So you can see right here, when I do put the Galaxy Z Flip in landscape, if you want to use your app side by side, it's actually quite good because you have a whole section right here to put your app and a whole section right here, which you can do in multitasking. But when it comes to just the overall length of the display, especially when you're in one app, it's just a little bit strange to me. So let's go ahead and flip it this way. And you can kind of see right there, just a very nice multitasking experience, but when you're not in multitasking, just really long and a little bit awkward in my opinion. And because this display is rather narrow, it kind of crams the keyboard down just a little bit here. So let's hit Nick Ackerman channel and we'll go to the Galaxy Z Flip unboxing. And I want to show you something in just a minute. There's actually two things I want to show you. Number one, this only has a single speaker, so that's an automatic con considering that you're paying $1,380 and you're getting a single speaker. Dolby Atmos will only work with Bluetooth headphones, and of course no headphone jack here. And now when watching videos as well, you're going to notice because of this aspect ratio, you get extremely large bars here on both sides. Now when you do pinch in, you can see a lot of content will get cut off, and even if the content was created for 2:1 aspect ratio or a different aspect ratio, it might not fit this display just because this is a rather new aspect. So this video watching experience on the Galaxy Z Flip to me is not the best video watching experience. Now, what about that mode where you just watch it like this? A lot of people are talking about you could just place it down, serves as a stand, and I actually think this is pretty cool. It's pretty useful. However, that video window is so small in this view that it kind of sometimes defeats the purpose. So it is pretty cool that you can hold this as a stand. I cannot take that away from Samsung on that one. But that display window is so small, I think most people are still going to go ahead and flip this thing into the landscape to watch the full experience on this phone. Now, my next con with this device is that it's a two-step process to get into the phone. You got to flip it open. Now, you know you're getting into that when you get this phone. However, with how fast our lives move these days, you know, just having to flip it open every time, it can get old after a while. It's fun at first, but if you're trying to do something really quickly, you got to flip this thing open every time. And if you don't unlock, if you have the fingerprint sensor, then you're going to have to do that too. So it's 1, 2, and then boom, you're in the device. So I think that could be a con for some people, you know, after initial fun of playing with the flip mechanism, then it might start to get old and you might start to get annoyed that you got to keep opening this thing up every time you just want to get to your phone really quickly. And so what about this whole, you know, typing kind of like a laptop mode? Now, hey, this is a test. This is actually pretty cool to do this here for the Galaxy Z Flip. You can kind of type with the keyboard on the bottom and then you have the screen up there, kind of like a little laptop. However, this seems a little bit gimmicky because this display is just so small here that, you know, eventually you're going to have to just go ahead and just double thumb type right here to get some speed. Because if you have it like this, I mean, it's just a little bit strange. I mean, you're not going to type like this. I mean, with your index fingers, it's just a little bit strange. So for me, I think this is a novelty feature to show off. But I don't think many people are going to use this feature a lot once they got used to the phone. Now, like I say, I do think people are going to use this whole stand mechanism to watch a video or prop it in the right angle so you don't have to move your neck or anything if you're lying in bed. Pretty cool stuff there. But in terms of this whole, you know, laptop mode, I just don't think that's going to be super practical. My next con with this phone so far is that the bezels are just super thick right here. These bezels are very thick on this device, and these little caps right here just give it an unsightly appearance. You can just tell, oh, that's where they bend the phone at. You know, it just doesn't seem seamless. I know this is the first edition, and over the years it's going to get better and better, but just have to point that out. If you get this phone, be aware that you are going to have not the prettiest, the most seamless looking bezels, and these little caps right here are going to be in the way. They're not like a Galaxy S20 where everything just looks so beautiful and just perfectly seamless around the corners and just really thin, razor thin bezels. This phone doesn't give you that. Next up is the cover display. Now, I've been using it a little bit and it is functional. Don't get me wrong, it's practical, but it doesn't show enough information and it's not large enough to make it something that I would recommend getting this phone for just for that cover display. I actually wish this whole front part was a display and you could open up, you know, applications right here, because that would avoid me having to go ahead and open up this phone every time, putting more stress on the Hinge, which is only rated up to 200,000 folds. Now, that's a lot, but when you're messing with this phone day in and day out, that might put some stress on the Hinge. So overall, I would like to see the next version of this phone have a bigger display on the front in which we could interact with applications on. Now, next up, I found there is a slight gap in between the phone right here. You can actually see like whatever's behind you. If you look, you know, you close one eye, you kind of look through it, you can see it. And that worries me that particles and dust are going to get in this phone. Now, this phone seems very well sealed in terms of the bezel around the edges does seal it down. These caps feel very well sealed. It actually feels a little bit more sturdy and better sealed than the Galaxy Fold, but at the same time, still having that gap means fine particles can get in. And the screen doesn't feel, even though it's ultra thin glass, it doesn't feel super durable. Like, I feel like I'm gonna be safe from scratches on this phone. You know, I feel like I could scratch this thing with my fingernail on the Galaxy Z Flip. The con I found with this phone so far is that opening and closing it, it's not super easy with one hand. Now, you can do it, got to put some muscle into it, but you kind of got to dig your finger under the display right there, and if you're going rough or you're being aggressive, you might accidentally scratch that display with your fingernail. So a lot of times you're going to have to open the Galaxy Z Flip with two hands. Now, that's a far cry away from flip phones of yesteryear. Flip phones back in the day, it's one hand, you just flick that thing open like nothing. This, not so much. I think most people are going to have to go like that every time they open the phone. Now, you can close and hang up on people. That's pretty cool. You can close and open it. You can open it to answer phone calls as well, so that's pretty cool. That'll go in my pros video. But at the same time, like I say, it's a little bit heavy to go ahead and open this thing up, so you're going to need two hands most of the time. So if you thought this was going to be a one-hander, it can be, but you're going to be taking a chance of digging your nail under there and scratching up the display. Another thing I noticed, if you can see right there, just a fingerprint magnet. This thing attracts fingerprints like no other, and it makes it feel very slimy and oily. You're going to definitely need one of these things for this phone, and it's no different with this display. Actually, this display seems to be attracting more fingerprints than any of my other Samsung phones with traditional glass displays, and that's a con because when you go ahead and you want to take a selfie, now you got all this cloudiness and smudge action going on the front-facing camera, so you're going to have to wipe it off to go ahead and take a photo from the front-facing camera. So that's a definite con because we're not always going to have this little, rag here to go ahead and wipe our display every single time. So yeah, keep that in mind. Very fingerprinty phone, especially on the inside display and on the outsides. And the cases that they included in the box are not really any better. Those also feel about the same as the phone does, even with the case off. A couple other things I'm not liking about this phone: it's only 4G LTE. It's mostly because of that price point, $13.80. I want 5G on my phone for that kind of money, Samsung. I know this is your flip phone, but come on, throw some 5G on there at that price point. If you're not going to throw 5G, at least knock $300 off the price point. Another con you could say is it has last year's chip, doesn't have the Snapdragon 865 like we're going to see in the S20 series, and no 90 Hz or 120 Hz display, although I can say with Android 10 and One UI 2.0, it's a pretty darn smooth experience on this phone. I don't think it's going to bother too many people who actually want that flip mechanism. But on the whole, though, I'm pretty sure being that this is flexible OLED, they don't have that technology available just yet. And lastly, besides the flipping mechanism with this phone, it's just really another Samsung flagship phone. Although I'm seeing the cameras, they look pretty strong, especially these rear cameras. Even though these rear cameras are not, the quad cameras and stuff like that, they're looking pretty strong so far, according to what I'm seeing. So for me, I don't feel like this phone feels its price point. It doesn't feel like $13.80. This feels like maybe $9.99. Maybe you could argue $10.99. But I think they're a little bit overpriced on this one. It doesn't feel that price point. It doesn't even have that heft like a $1,300 phone. It kind of feels light and, it doesn't feel super premium. It just feels cool. Like, it just feels cool to use. It's cool to flip it. It's cool to show it on its side, put it on this flex mode. It's just different and it's compact. And really what you're paying for here with this Galaxy Z Flip is that you're paying to be able to flip your smartphone. That's what you're paying for. Because if you want a better smartphone, the Galaxy S20 Ultra is definitely going to be the better phone than this. In terms of a camera, in terms of the battery life, in terms of the display smoothness, everything is going to be all around more refined than the Galaxy Z Flip, but you're paying for that flip mechanism. So yeah, there's quite a few cons in this video. Let me know if you think I'm justified in my cons or you think they're petty, they're weak, these are not good justifications. I'm still buying that phone. Again, I didn't make this video to try to convince you not to buy it. I just made this video to point out what I'm noticing so far are the cons. I also have a laundry list of pros to this phone so far. So if you want to see the pros of Galaxy Z Flip, let me know down below, or maybe I'll just conclude those in the full review. So look out for that. Subscribe if you haven't already. Nick here, helping you to master your technology. Thumbs up if you enjoyed it. I will catch you all in the next episode, and peace.